Hello, friends. Tara Bachland here, author of Universal Self-Care, Improved Health Through Self-Understanding, and the creator of the Weight-Free Wellness podcast. Today, my guest is Zoe McKey, and she's the author among many books. This is a recent book, Catching Courage, How to Stop Hesitating, Take Control over Your Anxieties, and Believe in Yourself. Use obstacles to your benefit. I love this title. I was doing some research on who I could have on as a guest. I loved this title, and I could just feel the empowerment message through the words that she was sharing, and had to invite her on. You know, she doesn't necessarily speak directly to health and wellness, but I like to share resources and people who have the components of a wellness lifestyle mentality. And definitely, especially when you're in the crux of making changes on your wellness path, having courage to make the necessarily changes is a big part of this. So I'm happy to invite Zoe. It's Zoe, correct? I assume.
Correct.
Yeah. And so welcome.
Oh, thank you, Tara, for having me. I mean, it's such a great pleasure that I can actually speak a little bit about the wellness aspect of my work. I think that wellness and health and fitness is not only a physical thing, but it's also a mental thing. And when it comes to mental health, for example, I think my topic can be totally related with yours. Although I have to mention that Catching Courage is like a weird book among my general topic. It's my general topic is about more confidence, daily routines, how to make a more focused and productive life. But Catching Courage is a little bit different in the sense that it was more of a spiritual, more of a inner focused book, which is presenting several aspects of fear which we face day by day, and how to overcome these fears. And from this part, I think it's totally relatable here.
Yes, I found a number of the steps were very clear, and you have a few questions at the end of each chapter, which I think are always helpful, at least for me when I'm reading a book, to have someone say, you know, take this into consideration. So I found that was pretty helpful in that too. So
yes, I want. Excuse me.
I was just curious. That happens a lot, by the way. It's so easy to do over the webinar. But I'm curious. You call yourself a communications coach and a social development trainer, and I'd love to hear a little bit more about you and your background, and really what is a communications coach and a social development trainer, first of all.
Okay, so these are like very fancy titles, which sometimes people are like wondering, what's this? What could this be? And sometimes it's like a catchy thing, you know, that people will ask, oh, so what do you do then actually? But in reality, it's a very, very simple thing. Technically, I think I'm a moderator for people to help to find their own answers by asking them some questions regarding their problems, their issues they're facing. So as a communication coach, I rather ask people what do they think, what should they say when they communicate. And as a social development coach or trainer, I try to make people feel how should they say that thing. So it's one thing that you know what to respond when you are having a genuine conversation, but when you want to add some value to the conversation, not just be like, oh, I could reply, oh, good here, now the ball is on the other side, but you want to add some value to the other person, then you have to know how to say what you say, how to put some meaning in your words, how to be quick about realizing that what's happening behind those words. Like if somebody's telling you about a problem, for example, then maybe just expect that, oh, I understand you. But if they expect something more from your side, then like some sort of hidden help which they might not be brave enough to ask, then that's the social development part, let's say. So
Very interesting. That's very interesting. So how do you get into that kind of work?
It was a long process. I've been working several things during my young years, including translation and also being the main coach of a small Japanese company for 2 years. And I was rather getting involved in those 2 years in all this coaching and how-tos and what-tos. there were like many foreign people there who were like homesick, and it was really the case of the how-tos, not just the what to say. So that was my specialty, that I could tell other people, like at the company, how to share comforting words with people who might feel a little bit insecure in those period of time they face. So this is the background, and right now I'm full-time writer, but I still have some people like on Skype with whom I have a connection, like a coaching connection, and I help them with the aforementioned issues.
Cool. And I imagine that I kind of surmised by your book, Catching Courage, and the titles and so forth, that we could even have this improved relationship with ourselves, thinking of how we respond to our own thoughts and how we interact in our own mind. As you
Sure.
say, that's what I think.
Sure. So that's why the people go to psychology. First things first, to solve their own issues, right? So when we talk about like communication skills or social development skills, it's always important to have it first things first for yourself, so you can be to show an example for the people you want to coach. Because if you don't have it, then it's like very transparent that you're just teaching something, but you have no idea about it.
Mm-hmm. What I find so interesting is that a number of the guests that I've had on so far, when I go into researching more about them, we actually share a lot in common. We talked about the translating aspect, which I think really helps in communication. Obviously, you have to communicate at a different level, but also you glazed over it in your biography and also in the book Catching Courage. But I get this strong feeling like you have this background of experience of just what we would call the hard knocks. Like life has taught you lessons that you just are burning to share with others. And so what is it that prompted you said Catching Courage is a different book from your other books. You think you kind of alluded to it, but what really prompted you to write this book? What was that fire inside?
Yes, you're right, Tara. I had like many ups and downs in my life, but Catching Courage was a book which came out from the impulse of the moment, actually. This summer, I went for 4 days journey in the mountains alone. And first time in my life, I tried some stuff which I never did before, like paragliding, which was like a 5 minutes decision. And I have an altitude sickness. So it was like a really big step for me to do it. And after I came back from those mountains where I was almost completely alone, I had this little change in myself, which somehow I just thinking about courage. And I started writing those pages, and I started searching for quotes which are inspiring me. So this was the main point which made me write this book. Like, sometimes it's not like a matter of decision or the lack of fear. And this is what I made clear in my first chapter of this book, that I made a clear distinction between bravery and courage. Like, I have the feeling that oftentimes when people want to deal with their relationship with fear, they often think about they want to become braver. But in fact, that is what leads them to failure or becoming unsuccessful at the end of the story. Because in my perception, bravery is something, it's like a state of mind which has an absence of fear. So people who are brave are usually those superheroes or action movie characters we see, who are totally recklessly entering in situations without any critical judgment, and they do it, and they always seem bigger than the challenge they face. And there are two options: whether it's the first character who dies in a movie because he's like recklessly running to the wall and then he gets shot, or it's superhero, right? But at the end of the day, we're just having ordinary lives here. There are no alien, no zombie apocalypse which we have to survive. So in real life, bravery is a very rare quality. I think that only those people have this genuine bravery who were born into some sort of background which requires and teaches them from childhood to have this sort of thinking. Like, for example, like somebody who has military father or a soldier grandparent and the grandparent and the grandparent, and they grow up in, it's like breathing that air of you have to be brave thing. But genuinely courage, on the other hand, is more than a state of mind, is an emotion. When you feel that pressing fear, but you decide to do anyway what you're about to do, you're totally aware that failure is a high chance to happen in this situation, but you decide to do it anyway. And this is what, let's say, normal or ordinary people can do at their best, and they can improve in, and at the end they can have great achievements. Because most of the time when we have this fear of failure, it's more or less in our heads rather than an actual event. Like there is that saying that I had many fears in my life and some of them actually happened. So it's the same situation. So through courage, you experience an overcoming feeling of strength, which is totally aware that you are smaller than the issue, that you are totally exposed to nature, to faith, but you decide to do it anyway and let it be. So this is what the book is about: how to get this kind of feeling, how to face all the fears, different types of fears which we have, and how to respond to them with courage, instead of trying to be brave and fail and be disappointed and then think that, oh, I'm not good at this, I cannot make it, and then just go back to our nutshell and,
Mm-hmm. And I think you make an important, I love definitions of words, because as we break them down, so often so much more is revealed. And you share in that section too about how the word courage breaks down, and the core coming from the meaning for heart. And I think that really helps to explain too that courage is so much more. Like you said, there's an emotion component too, there's a feeling, and that really can, it feels like it can fuel us more, where bravery can be like a quick flame, where courage has that sustainability to it if you ride it out.
That's right. That's very good. You got it. I feel the same way about it. Like bravery is like a quick moment, and it has nothing to do with emotions. It's like a natural, like we can even say instinctual response. Whether courage, it's more about expressing your vulnerabilities and accepting them, and accepting to live with them and go on with your life with them.
Yeah, as you were talking about bravery again too, I got the image of, like they talk about the grandma who lifts the car off of the child. She doesn't even think, I'm going to break my back if I do this. She just does it, and of course there's heart, there's courage, there's love there, but it's such a snap, I'm going to do this. Whereas it's like Rosa Parks being, them coming up with this off the top of my head, so I hope this matches what you're talking about. But like Rosa Parks and what she did in not standing up on the bus, that took courage. Like that, of course there's bravery in the moment, but she knew that there's going to be long-term ramifications for her actions. And I know you write more, or at least I could surmise from your website and your book, that it's more about finding your purpose and interpersonal communications. And what I found interesting is that we can, in my health and wellness journey, and what I teach in health and wellness is actually these same principles, but applied to ourselves. So when we are faced with a diagnosis or something that scares us, and our immediate reaction may be to do something drastic, but we actually need to have the courage to stick to a long-term health plan. I find it fascinating how we find these principles all around us. And I'm a bit rambling because I these topics obviously fascinate me. But kind of relating to the wellness aspect too, you write about keeping goals to yourself. And especially as we come into the new year and so forth, a lot of people are going to be creating goals, right? And New Year's resolutions. And talk a little bit more of why you think and have found that keeping goals to yourself is actually more productive.
Well, I would like to resonate a little bit with what you were saying with the grandma and all these stories which
Oh,
were coming
please do.
out,
Yes,
and then I answer this question as well.
definitely.
Well, like when it comes to health and fitness, but it takes a lot of courage. Like it just made me think in the moment as you were talking that some people first have to have the courage to tell out loud what their problem is, or that they even have a problem. Like if we take like illnesses, like most of the time people already feel that something's wrong with them in terms of health, like physical health, but they are delaying it because they don't have the sort of courage to step out, to go to the doctor, and to eventually face if there's something wrong. And with this, they are like diminishing their chances of getting better. But if they just take a deep breath, and when the first symptoms appear, they just go to the doctor and they tell themselves, yes, I'm courageous, I admit I have something with myself, it's something wrong, and I want to know what this is so I can handle it. Then it's like a very big first step, which courage gives them the impulse to make the first step to recovery, in fact. Or when we are talking about people who are overweighted or facing any type of issue, the biggest first step is to have the courage to admit themselves that yes, I indeed have this issue. And then afterwards everything becomes much easier. So if they have this courageous confirmation for themselves that yes, I accept that something's wrong, but I want to make it right, whatever that is, like eating disorders, illness, weight problems, whatever. So I just wanted to add this. And when it comes to goals, uh, well, I've been like previously in my life, I was always like telling about my stuff for people. I was so excited when something just popped out of my head. I was like, oh, I can't wait to tell for this and that and that and that. And eventually I bumped into negative people or into people who were never uh, who could never imagine about themselves that they would be able to do that goal, and they were gradually out talking me from that goal. So this is why it's the first thing that I decided that I don't share my goals unless they are half done already, because if you are sometimes having some weak moments or like a little bit, or some people even more insecurity about themselves, then it's very easy to be out talked, even if from a good idea, because others might be having a more defeatist mindset, and for them it's like natural, they don't want to harm you, but for them it's impossible. Like for example, when I told my grandparents that I want to start writing instead of doing all the things I was doing before, they were like, are you crazy? Writers don't earn anything, like don't do that. And if I would have listened, then we wouldn't talk now, and I wouldn't have experienced that amazing journey I just did. But I also decided that I don't let them so involved with my issues because they don't understand. The other thing, why I don't like to share goals, and this one I heard in a podcast, like not podcast, it's a TED talk of Derek Sivers. It's like a very short video, like a 3-minute video, and it's worth watching. And he's like saying that it's very volatile uh, to imagine and to visualize goals or to talk about them for others, because even though you didn't achieve anything, just talk, in your mind you start feeling that fueled positive emotion you feel when you actually achieve something, or you finish a goal. And by feeling that emotion prematurely, you might be delaying or not even starting to work towards that goal because the positive emotion was already felt. Does it make sense?
Totally. Yeah. You're programming yourself.
Yes. So you program yourself to feel the positive emotions and the success when you didn't achieve anything except just coming up with a good idea. So this is another thing why I would suggest others to not necessarily talk or do too much visualization about their goals, even though it's like a big self-help top advice recently to use the power of visualization, because that will help you see your goal and all the aspects, but don't do too much.
Well, I can think about it too in the aspects of wellness goals. Definitely, there are people, like I could see us like in a, a women's entrepreneurial writing group. And if you have people who are really behind you and on board, and you can help each other find tools, you know, That's a little bit maybe, or like my husband, for example, I share some ideas with him. I do have to be careful, I know, about coming up with goals. Not that he'll shoot them down, but I know that happens to me where I get all excited and I share it, and it's like, whew, I feel better because he thinks that idea is awesome. And all right. And I do teach from the aspect of body typing, and I'm one of those body types where ideas come like crazy, and you almost feel like you have to share, like you have to write it down, you want to share, you just get so excited. But another aspect that you write about and you mentioned in a couple of sections is about motion. Get in motion and stay in motion, so that and I'm kind of putting my own interpretation here, but you have it in the decidophobia section and also in chapter 6 of the fear of the unknown. You mention them in different sections, but obviously it's important to you that a person gets in motion and stays in motion. And I can definitely attest to that, just referring back to our previous point about uh, being careful about who you share your goals with, and more than sharing, just start moving into action.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, if you have people in your life who you know that they are supportive, who never wanted to drag you down, or you know that they're not defeatist or are on the same page with you, or there is a special group, as you say, that you share the same goal, then of course share it and tell it. It's like, maybe it could be more better phrased, all this thing that, like, avoid negative people is just the typical breakdown. To avoid those people who are sharing any goal, what is important to you, with those who you know already, or you suspect that they might talk you out of stuff. So just save your goals for the most intimate circle you have, who you have totally trust in, and you know that they will support you no matter what.
Yeah,
So
definitely. Because there are some people who, and again, referring back to body typing, there are certain body types who, some are, I call the fire type, and they're like, I'm doing this no matter what. So you could say anything, and they're like, doesn't matter, I'm going to do it. And some people are very volatile, and knowing yourself and knowing which end of the spectrum you're on can be really helpful as well. So the decidophobia, that is clearly one of your uh, things that you pull out that can be a fear mechanism.
yes, like I told you that I chapter by chapter I go through different aspects of fear people might face and how to reply with them, or to them with courage. Like the decidophobia is like technically the fear of making a decision. So people sometimes hesitate to make a decision. Oh, should I do that? Should I do that? No, I should not. Maybe I ask this, maybe I ask that person. But even though they delay a decision, or they choose to not make a decision, that's also a decision. So it's always like a decision to make. And yes, sometimes this decidophobia can kick you out from the track. And as you were mentioning before, that yes, I put a great emphasis on keep being in motion, staying in motion, and going forward no matter what. Decidophobia can slow this motion a little bit, or even stop it if you decide not to do something. Uh, Sometimes you can have fear of decision when you face like a big step, so you don't know whether or not to make this big decision, how to make it. And here I used I suggested the small step strategy. There is this saying that how to eat an elephant, cutting it piece by piece. So when you face like a big decision, then just try to stay on track. And if you cannot do all the elephant in one decision or from one action, then just like decide the smallest factor that is needed to be decided, and do that smallest factor. Go for the small factor. Cut one big piece of things to do into 10 smaller, 3 smaller steps. You decide, like it depends on the situation, but there is this law that it's always easier to keep an object in motion, to be in motion, than a stationary object to pull or to push and make it moving. So it's always more easy to stay in motion than to stop and start again, stop, start again. Not to mention the psychological aspect behind it, that if you stop even for a day or for a week, you interpret it interpret it as weakness from your side, as a failure. Oh, come on, I couldn't resist with this diet for 1 week. I'm not going to be able to do it. Why should I start it again? Why? Because it's the proof here that I couldn't resist for a week. So it's like a negative small talk coming into your head instantly when you stop with the decision. So this is why I find it so important to, even if you slow down, don't stop with that thing, because then it just gives you a bad self-remark, let's say.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. It reminds me of the 12-step program where they tout, just one day at a time, just for today, abstain, whatever you're trying to abstain from or do. And I know for myself, that makes a huge difference. Just
Yes.
consistency, so many of us, we need consistency, but we ultimately have to create it for ourselves.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And you can always like tailor make it for yourself. Like you can read a lot of books. You can read my books about daily routines or anybody else's. The fact is that we tell stuff which worked for us, or we find it helpful or a good tip, but at the end of the day, they are like not iron cast decisions or steps you should make. Just take an inspiration from them and make it for yourself for your own day, which you know that you can respect without hesitation. Because there are some small stops which you can make, like even in fitness, when you do dieting, there are cheating days, right? So there is always like a little bit of ease you can put on yourself or reward yourself eventually after a bigger time period or a smaller time period, with a proportional reward, like small achievements, small reward, big achievement, big Nutella, I don't know. So there is always this helpful cheat, but what matters is that most of the time to stay on track with whatever you decide to do.
Definitely. And you mentioned too, just the small steps, going with, what is it that you need? I don't have it written down here, but there's something to the effect of, just assess what you need, what really needs to happen, or prioritize, and start with those chunks.
Yes, I think I have a part in the book where I say that start by doing what's necessary, then do what's possible, and suddenly you're doing the impossible. It's a quote from Francis of Assisi. And sometimes people, I have the feeling that they misjudge the word necessity or necessary, and they give a bad connotation to that. Whether it's not always like something which is a drag, it's necessary and must do it. It's just something on the tip of your mind. It should be like, sometimes I think that the necessary aspects of doing something is just knowing what do you want to do, because oftentimes people are like totally living in the air and, oh, maybe I should do something, but don't know what. What's necessary is to know crystal clear what you want to do, what you want to achieve, how do you want to get from point A to point B, and all the other things become possible by having a clear state of mind and a clear goal what to follow, whether it's about fitness, finances, relationship, whatever. Just be clear where you want to go.
Certainly. In chapter 6, you talk about gaining knowledge in related areas. I think that leads in really well, that you may get crystal clear. And part of that is even informing yourself. And you use the examples of finance and accounting. Like you may have to inform yourself if you're starting a business or something on finance and accounting. And I kind of related that personally as thinking health and wellness. Like you may need to actually educate yourself about fitness and nutrition, but it's to help you get to your goal. That it doesn't have when it's a part of your goal, it can be exciting. And I like that you put in there to trust your gut. So it's gain the knowledge in the related areas, trust your gut, and here it is again. And move, do something.
Yes, exactly. Like, for example, knowledge, if you mention it, it's a very good antidote to fear or fear of risk. I think that another great fear in our lives is fear of the unknown. When we feel that we are not secure in something, we don't know something about something enough, then to gain knowledge in that particular aspect, if it's important enough, it's like a crucial step to make. Like, for example, you mentioned finances. If you want to invest your little fortune in something, but you know nothing about finances, or you know nothing about investment, you will like freak out every day, because you probably will hire somebody and you will always be in the doubt whether or not he's honest. He's talking finance language for you and you're like, oh, okay. So you cannot follow him. But if you take the fatigue to learn a little bit of accounting, learn a bit about investments, about the market, then you will feel gradually less and less stressed. You will feel that step less and less risky, because you know that what you're doing is the right thing to do, or it's not the right thing to do. It's, again, it applies to fitness as well. If you're like having doubts about, oh, will this ketogenic diet work for me? I mean, it's so famous now on Amazon, maybe I should try it. Then you will not be so sure about it, and you might not be able to stick to that goal so passionately, because like as diets function, in the first day or the first week you won't experience like a sudden change. And if you don't know much about it, you just do it, then you might lose faith. But if you dig a little deeper into the biological aspects of that particular diet, how does it function, how quickly, what you should eat, what you should not eat, then it instantly becomes a more credible stuff to follow. So knowledge can help us reduce our fears or fear of risk like drastically, if there is a topic which is indeed important.
Definitely. And sometimes it's even just hearing other people's stories, which is why I try to make this a resource where not only do you hear about the resources and the how-tos, but when you hear a success story, that inner dialogue changes, like, I think I can do that. I'm going to try that. Then it's inspiring too, to learn a little bit more about that. It doesn't have to be like going to school and I have to learn this subject, but when you are making positive changes, learning the things that help you get there can be very exciting and extremely helpful for sure.
Yes, that's true. And one of my big mottos in life was always that if somebody else could do it, why couldn't I? Like, what does that person has so special thing that I couldn't do if I am as devoted as that person? Or maybe I have to put an extra mile there, but if somebody else could do it, there is definitely a chance of success, because there is a proof that it can be a success. So why not give a try at least? So yeah, I totally agree.
Absolutely. So we are wrapping up to the end here, and I like to ask people, guests, what is something that you would share from what you do that, like kind of a takeaway message? Or you kind of just gave one.
I think so. Well, this is my main message, I think, that I would give to the people, the listeners who are listening to this podcast, that whatever you do, whatever aspect of your life you want to improve, always be clear about it first. In all my books, I put this, which might seem very repetitive and very boring after a time. Just take a paper, take a pen, sit down, and put it in paper point by point. What are your plans towards this particular life area in the next week, the next month? Where do you want to be in a year? And stick to that plan. I mean, the inside factors, the dates, the deadlines can change a little bit, or as you progress with that goal, then you might see a better way to do it. But just have a clear vision about what do you want to achieve, and then everything gets into place. Like we talk about staying in motion. It's much easier to stay in motion when you actually know what to do day by day. Without a clear goal, you don't know where you are heading. And Columbus, for example, discovered America instead of buying herbs in India, but it turned out a good thing to be. So you don't have to stick necessarily for what you want, because it might end up in a better thing. But what matters is to be courageous and put it down and plan.
Get on the boat, put up the sails.
Yay, Captain, and let's go.
Right. Well, wonderful. How can people find you and your information?
Well, I think the easiest way to find me is www.zoemckey.com, my website. Or if they just type in Amazon search engine Zoe McKey, they can find me as well. It's like MC and key, like the thing with which you open locks.
Yep. I will, of course, have that in the show notes as well, and a
Thank you.
synopsis of our talk here. It has been wonderful to get to know you in this short amount of time. I feel like we'll be in contact for sure, and I wish you much success. Thank you for taking the time to be here today and sharing with us.
Thank you, Tara, for having me.
Thanks for joining us today on the Weight Free Wellness Podcast. Check out weightfreewellness.com where I've made all kinds of nice goodies for you there. Healthy recipes with wellness insights, my elderberry syrup, cold and flu remedy, my favorite remedies checklist, and so much more. Click on the Facebook link and converse with us. I love connecting with you, hearing from you, and you'll also find ways to subscribe to the podcast if you haven't done so already. Thank you so much for listening. Have a wonderful day.